Am I the a-hole for dismantling the empire of my ex-best friend and her family after they framed me for a crime I didn't commit and stole my future? Throwaway for obvious reasons. This is a long one, so grab a cup of tea. For context, I-32F grew up in a small, tight-knit community. My family wasn't wealthy, but we were comfortable and well-respected. My father was a beloved local carpenter, my mother a kind-hearted librarian. I had an older brother, Mark, 35M, who was a bit of a free spirit but always had my back. My best friend, Bethany, 32F, came from one of the most prominent families in town. Her father, Mr. Thorne, owned most of the local businesses, and her mother, Mrs. Thorne, was the president of every charity committee imaginable. Bethany and I were inseparable from kindergarten. We shared secrets, dreams, and an unspoken promise to always be there for each other. Our dream ever since we were little girls was to open a joint art studio and cafe. I was the artist, she was the baker. We had it all planned out. The rustic interior, the quirky menu names, the weekly open mic nights. My grandmother, bless her soul, had left me a substantial inheritance, specifically for this purpose, set to be accessible on my 25th birthday. It wasn't Thorne-level money, but it was more than enough to get our dream off the ground. When I was 24, a series of break-ins plagued our town. Small businesses were targeted, cash registers emptied, and sometimes a piece of sentimental merchandise was taken. The police were baffled, and a general sense of unease settled over the community. Then, one night, the most beloved antique shop in town, owned by an elderly widow, was vandalized. Not just robbed, but utterly destroyed. Displays shattered, paintings slashed, and the safe, which contained not only cash but also irreplaceable family heirlooms, was emptied. The town was outraged. I remember that night vividly. Bethany and I had been out celebrating her early acceptance into a prestigious culinary program. We had a few drinks, nothing excessive, and then she dropped me off at my place around midnight. The next morning, I woke up to flashing lights and police sirens. My house was surrounded. Before I could even fully comprehend what was happening, I was arrested. The charges were staggering: grand larceny, vandalism, and breaking and entering. I was in shock. They showed me evidence, my fingerprints on a unique antique vase stolen from the shop, a distinctive piece of jewelry found in my bedroom drawer that had been reported missing from another break-in, and security footage from a nearby ATM showing someone matching my description withdrawing cash from an account linked to the stolen funds just hours after the antique shop was hit. Bethany, devastated, provided an alibi for me for the earlier part of the night, but couldn't account for the crucial hours when the antique shop was targeted. She tearfully testified that I had seemed a little off that night, and she couldn't believe I was capable of such a thing. My parents were distraught. Mark rallied, trying to find lawyers, but the evidence was overwhelming. The community, once so warm, turned cold. Bethany's family, in a show of public solidarity, offered their support to the victimized shop owner and even organized a fundraiser, subtly positioning themselves as pillars of morality in a town rocked by betrayal. I was convicted. My dreams, my future, everything shattered. I spent 5 years in prison, a living nightmare. The artistic passion that once defined me withered under the harsh reality of incarceration. My family visited when they could, but the shame and the cost took a toll. Mark, God bless him, never gave up on me. Even when my appeals were denied, he pored over legal documents, searched for new evidence, always believing in my innocence. The turning point came a year after my release. I was a shadow of my former self, working odd jobs, trying to rebuild a life that felt irrevocably broken. Mark, still relentless, stumbled upon a series of anomalies in the original police report. A specific type of forensic analysis that had been overlooked, a tiny detail in the ATM footage that contradicted the official timeline. He hired a private investigator, a former detective who had worked with my father on community projects. The investigator, a gruff but sharp man named Miller, started digging. He found out that the antique vase with my fingerprints had been handled by numerous people, including Bethany, during a craft fair the previous month. The distinctive jewelry? It was a gift I had given Bethany years ago, a replica of a family heirloom of mine. She had confessed to Miller under intense questioning that she had borrowed it back from my drawer the night of the break-in, intending to surprise me by wearing it to our celebration, but then forgot to return it. It was a flimsy excuse, but it opened a door. The ATM footage was the real smoking gun. The person withdrawing cash had a distinct tattoo on their wrist, one that I didn't have, but Bethany did, a small, intricate butterfly. The police, eager to close the high-profile case, had conveniently overlooked this detail, or perhaps had been subtly encouraged to do so. The pieces started to click into place. Bethany's alibi only covered the early part of the evening. The break-in at the antique shop occurred after she dropped me off. She knew my habits, my vulnerabilities. She had planted the evidence, used my unique gift to incriminate me, and then strategically timed the withdrawal from the stolen funds, knowing I would be the prime suspect. Miller uncovered more. Bethany's family, the Thorns, were on the brink of financial ruin at the time. Their empire, while appearing solid, was riddled with bad investments and mounting debts. The antique shop, being uninsured for total loss, received a substantial donation from the Thorn family, solidifying their public image and gaining them favor during a crisis. The break-ins that preceded the major one, small, targeted acts to create a climate of fear and deflect suspicion, making the antique shop incident seem like a part of a larger pattern. Bethany, driven by a twisted loyalty to her family and a desperate desire to protect their facade, had orchestrated it all. She had used our shared dreams, our friendship, and my grandmother's inheritance, which would have put me on equal footing with her, as tools in her scheme. The money from the antique shop safe and the subsequent donations to the owner were just drops in the bucket compared to what she hoped to gain: the removal of a potential competitor, me, and the bolstering of her family's reputation during a crisis. The truth was a punch to the gut. My best friend, the person I trusted implicitly, had betrayed me in the cruelest way. She had stolen not just my freedom, but my innocence, my reputation, and 5 years of my life. My grandmother's inheritance, locked away while I was incarcerated, was almost entirely depleted by legal fees and family expenses related to my defense. It took another 2 years for the truth to be officially recognized. My conviction was overturned. Bethany was arrested, but thanks to her family's wealth and influence, she received a significantly lighter sentence than I did, mostly probation and community service. The Thorns publicly disavowed her, claiming she had acted alone, a troubled youth manipulated by bad influences. The town, in a sudden reversal, offered apologies and sympathy, but the damage was irrevocably altered. That's when the cold, patient rage began to simmer. I wasn't just going to get my life back, I was going to dismantle everything they held dear. Every single one of them, for their complicity, their lies, and their willing sacrifice of my future for their own. It took me another 7 years to execute my plan. I changed my name, moved to a different state, and severed all ties with my old life, except for Mark, who became my silent partner in this slow-burning vendetta. I worked tirelessly rebuilding my art career from scratch, but this time with a sharp, calculating edge. My art became darker, more complex, imbued with a hidden strength. I invested every penny I earned, not in my dreams of a calf, but in learning the intricate world of finance, corporate law, and the vulnerabilities of the Thorn Empire. I devoured books, took online courses, and even worked for a short stint at a cutthroat investment firm, learning their tactics. I was no longer the naive artist. I was a ghost with a blueprint for revenge. The Thorn family, meanwhile, had largely recovered from Bethany's scandal. Mr. Thorn, ever the opportunist, had used the troubled daughter narrative to garner public sympathy and even expand his businesses, leveraging new public contracts that came his way. Mrs. Thorn, her charitable facade intact, continued to reign supreme in the town's social circles. They believed they had weathered the storm, swept the ugliness under the rug, and emerged stronger. They believed I was a forgotten casualty, a cautionary tale. The revenge, when it finally came, was a carefully orchestrated symphony of calculated destruction. Phase 1, unseen penetration. Using my new identity and a meticulously crafted professional persona as a brilliant, enigmatic art consultant, I began to acquire significant shares in smaller, seemingly unrelated businesses that were key suppliers or service providers to the Thorn empire. These were not direct competitors, but essential cogs in their machine. I operated through layers of shell companies and blind trusts, ensuring no direct link could ever be traced back to me. I cultivated a reputation as a shrewd, discerning investor, always one step ahead. Phase 2, strategic undermining. I started subtly manipulating the supply chains of Thorn-owned businesses. A crucial ingredient for Bethany's family bakery, Thorn Sweet Delights, would suddenly be delayed by weeks due to unforeseen shipping issues from my subtly controlled logistics company. Essential building materials for Mr. Thorne's construction firm would mysteriously become unavailable from my acquired suppliers, forcing him to pay exorbitant prices to competitors. These were minor irritations at first, but they caused mounting production